people will be like, well, that person's not this type. And it's like, if those are their best fit type preferences, they are under no obligation to fit your template of what you think their type looks like. Like, I'm under no obligation to look like every other ENTP. Type is not static in nature. So if we only understand it through a static lens, a snapshot of a profile, then we're by definition going to be losing some of its accuracy. If you've gotten to a level of mastery over the system, stop studying the system and start studying people.
Hey, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge. Joel.
Yes.
Is type a moment in time, or is it a fluid expression over time?
You're talking about somebody's personality type.
Yeah. Is type supposed to tell us like a snapshot of cognition?
Yeah.
Or is type supposed to give us a sort of a guide through the map of life?
It's a good question. Well, you know this because I've been talking to you about it for the last couple of days. But
Yes.
I all of a sudden have a very visceral image in my head of how we've been going about, not you and me, but how the world's been going around talking about personality type. And the image I have in my head is, you remember one of those, I don't know if you've ever seen a movie or a picture of one of those, it's like a cork board. Where people have collected insects, often like butterflies, and I guess they've killed them because they have to kill them to do this. But they take a dead butterfly or bug, like a moth or butterfly, and they stick a pin through it.
Yeah.
And they've got a row of them, and then they label what that butterfly is or that moth on the corkboard.
Like a specimen.
Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about that the last few days because I think that's how we've been, the universe, people have been approaching personality type. We've been taking these 4 letters and people's personalities, and we've been basically, like you have ENTP preferences, Antonia. It's almost like when we talk about ENTPs on the internet, or when I see that written or you read in a book or something, I think people have a mental image of it like a moth or a butterfly on that corkboard. It's like, it's clearly defined, it's static, it's labeled, and we can visibly see it. And then we take that and we compare it to other maybe moving insects in the wild, I'm using the metaphor, to try to spot what that type is. We look at the static, pinned dead image that's labeled, and then we try to apply that to a live, living entity.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I think that if you're asking how do most people approach personality type, it's that static corkboard of butterflies. But how does personality type actually work? I would argue, or I would posit, that it's much more dynamic and fluid, like a butterfly in motion.
Yeah.
That would be my answer initially.
I suspect that type is sometimes very difficult to master or self-diagnose because we don't see it as something that is in motion with us.
Yeah.
Like, I think we serve it.
Yeah.
And if the model serves us, since we're constantly and fluidly in motion, then the model is going to have to flex and flow with us in motion.
Yeah.
And I think the best way to observe this is to watch how type changes over time. So our friend Dr. Dario Nardi has a phrase that I like to borrow from him from time to time, which is we can't talk about type until we talk about development.
Yeah.
And development is, I think, it's an expression of the fluidness of type through time. We come online developmentally at certain moments. We know this just as people. There are certain time periods where we're ready for things and other time periods where we're not. Have you ever tried to, potty train a 1-year-old? Like you go, maybe I'll just wait a couple of years and this will be a lot easier. And then you wait until they're like 3 or 4 and then it's like infinitely easier.
Exercise and futility, right?
Yeah. And so there are certain time periods where just developmentally we're more ready for something.
Yeah.
And I think that also gets expressed in our cognition. Like we're certain time periods in our life, we're more developmentally ready to start exploring parts of our personality and our cognition, specifically like the car model, cognitive functions. If it's a fluid map and it meets us where we're at in the timeline of our life, then it's a lot less of a specimen to study than it is a dynamic to observe over time.
Yeah.
But I think that makes type a lot more difficult to understand. And so we end up doing what I call creating a coloring book version of type.
Yeah.
If you look at like a complicated, you know, like one of the masters, like in painting, you look at a Monet or you look at a Van Gogh, there's not really very many clean lines. In fact, it's mostly just sort of impressions and colors smushed up against each other in order to create shape and, you know, like from a distance, a concept of what's going on there. But if you look at it really close, you're not going to be able to find any specific lines. But if a person's going to translate that into a coloring book, then they're going to have to take the impressions and then turn them into bold lines with lots of white space in between.
Yeah.
And I think that's, of course, if we're first learning type, that's the only way to do it because it's complicated and there's a lot to it. So we kind of have to turn it into sort of a coloring book version in our head. We have to take what is effectively a study of impression and turn it into something that's a little bit more crude, a little bit bolder, and maybe not as close to how reality is actually experienced.
Yeah.
We have to take it into these like really, you know, like black and white, lots of white space, not a lot of nuance or distinctions. But the more we understand type, the more we understand that there's a bit of impressionism there. There's a little bit of interpretation there. There's a little bit of understanding how this person is experiencing type and a very unique, bespoke way to them as an individual.
Yeah.
And so I think when we first are learning, it's important it's okay. We have to hold some space for making it oversimplified, two-dimensional, overly bold lines, lots of white space. And I think as we become more familiar with type, I think we have to get to a place where we realize how in motion it actually is. That it's not just a two-dimensional flat impression of a snapshot of a specimen, you know, like you said, sort of pinned to a corkboard. But it's actually a moving, shifting, breathing, living thing because it's us and we are those things.
And I think when you say development, it makes me think just because you have the raw materials for something or the building blocks for something doesn't make that thing either immediate or absolutely emergent, right? So as an example, most kids hit, I didn't until I was like 16 and a half, 17, but most kids hit puberty around like 13. I was like, I was driving up to the Pennsylvania Turnpike at like 16. I looked like I was 12.
Yeah.
They're like, sir, are you old enough to drive this motor vehicle? I'm like, yes, officer, I'm fine. And they're like,
you get your license, you look like
I'm like,
a 12-year-old.
I had to prove it like that I'm that old. But most kids, I think, hit puberty around like 13 or 14.
Yeah, you were a late bloomer.
And effectively what puberty means is your body is ready to reproduce. Mm-hmm. Like your physicality has all the wiring, everything's ready to go.
Yep.
Right? And basically a parent's job is to like stop that from happening.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal. It's like
until the emotions and the cognition catch up.
Because there's developmental elements to this. Mm-hmm. So in a way you could say, like, I'm trying to draw the analogy, like, well, the type is there, like all the wiring of the type, it's ready to procreate, right? At 14, you've hit puberty. You technically are biologically an adult, right?
Yeah.
Your brain hasn't fully formed, but you have the biological mechanisms to reproduce, to mate. You don't have the maturity though. You don't have the skill and you don't have the experience.
Yeah.
So what happens? Well, your body through development, not just physical development, because that already happened. It's through emotional, maturing development, cognitive development. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to be in relationship.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of things you have to learn to operate like the raw wiring you get at puberty.
Right.
And kids that don't get that training, they obviously make a lot of choices. They were like, oh no, is that good or whatever? And that could be debated. That's not what the point of this is. The point is that it's similar to type. It's like people are like, oh, you're an ENTJ. You have ENTJ preferences. Well, that means you're going to be, commandeering. You're going to be great with resource management. Yeah. You're going to get projects done. You're always going to have a vision of what to do. You're going to be like a field commander.
Yeah.
It's like telling a 14-year-old, oh, you're ready to have kids. It's like just because you have a personality type doesn't mean you have developed into all the aspects of that personality type.
Right.
Right. And you might just be starting your journey and just some of those things, or you might be applying it somewhere differently. So I think development's really an interesting conversation when you look at other ways that we develop as humans.
Yeah.
For some reason, we don't expect a 14-year-old to be equipped for children, to be a parent, but we expect somebody that just learned about their type to be able to like have that static, label and then understand what that means. But there's development that has to happen. You have to actually activate parts of your personality. There's this idea of an ambivert. Like people are like, well, I'm an ambivert. Yes, you are. We have an introverted part, an extroverted part. We're much more rounded out than maybe the little label would tell you. It's so binary feeling. And it's through development and living your life, understanding the personality map, that you realize all of these things.
Well, I do think that a person can develop without knowing their type.
Absolutely.
And I think that they can even develop along developmental, markers that would normally be charted, if one knows type and if they know their cognitive functions.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I think I understand your metaphor. I think what you're basically, or analogy, I think what you're basically trying to say is that there are things that come online at certain time periods that that we may give it more sophistication or more weight than maybe it has necessarily earned. And there's I think the correlation you're saying is that when we believe we understand type, and particularly like in profiles around the 16 types,
yes,
we then take these overarching, like sort of the highest concept level, which is that this is what an ENTJ looks like. And then we apply that to every single person who, has ENTJ preferences, but they're not going to all look the same, that they're going to be in very different places in their life in very different developmental levels.
That's
Just
right.
like when we say that somebody's body is ready for procreation, we're not necessarily talking about like a 30-year-old. We're talking about anybody who's hit puberty all the way up into, like, say, for a woman, menopause. Right? Like, we're talking about like a wide swath of people.
Sure.
And so simply qualifying somebody as being in a state or having the characteristics of this thing doesn't actually say much about where they're at developmentally. Is that basically what you were trying to say?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
I was probably unclear because it's such a new idea to use the metaphor analogy. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's like, just because there is a label that you have, like procreatability or
right.
whatever, like you have the ability to procreate. That's like a label you have,
right.
or like
it doesn't really tell you anything
you're
about
fertile. Let's say fertile's the label.
Yeah. If a person's fertile, it doesn't really tell you anything else about them.
Exactly.
Right.
It's such a small aspect of that. So I think a 4-letter type label is often the same.
Right.
It can give you a lot of information, and it's really useful. I mean, and labels are really useful. I like to use the analogy of New York City. Like, if you're going to go to New York City, the label of New York City is useful. You know which city you're in, and you can navigate around the city using the street labels, like the street signs. But it's hard to really get around New York City effectively without a map of some sort. You're going to pull a map up on your phone or get a paper map, because then you can see all the alleys, the streets, you can see the subway lines, you can actually navigate to the different locations you want to go to. You could still navigate with labels, but you'll be very, very, very frustrated, and there will be a limit to what you can do.
Yeah.
And I think people that just use labels with personality type, it's very similar. It's like trying to navigate life with these very binary. I mean, they're good starting places, but just like orientating in New York City, it's a good starting place, but the map is where the magic is.
Yes. So, and just to make sure that I mention this too, I do think that understanding a person's best fit type tells you a lot more information than simply saying that the person's fertile. Like, I think,
of course, of course.
I just, as you were talking about the metaphor, I was like thinking of all the ways that somebody's like, how does this relate? But I think I understand what you're saying. What you're basically saying is that just because a person has qualities and characteristics of something doesn't actually tell you much about how they're going to relate to those qualities and characteristics.
Yes.
So like the concept of being fertile, like there's the idea of being fertile, and then there's everything that means to the individual person that is in that state. Right?
The word fertiles is cracking me up.
Well, you chose it.
I know. And then I'm like, wow, that's going to be just hilarious.
I'm not 100% sure why you decided to go down the road of puberty, but we're here now, and we're in the analogy.
You used the word developmental, and so I thought, what's developmental? And it like kicked me over to that, and then now we're here. We can go to a different analogy.
Okay, well, but I'm just going to close up that analogy by acknowledging that, yes, understanding our best fit type preferences does give us a substantial amount of information about a person.
Yeah.
More information than, say, they've hit puberty and are still in their fertile years. But that said, I think that's, I mean, in some ways it's kind of an interesting analogy because, like I mentioned, it doesn't really tell you what the person's relationship to that state is. Well, and so I think a big part of understanding that type is fluid is recognizing that just because I know what my best fit type preferences are, doesn't actually tell me what my relationship to that type is. And I'm going to have a relationship to the type, just like I'm going to have a relationship to all the other aspects of myself. And that's going to be very individual. That's going to be my relationship to the type, not every ENTP's relationship to being an ENTP.
Exactly. And we could even use it outside of developmental. We could even just say the label of extrovert, right? Just extrovert. We know there's 4 different versions of extroversion, right? There's 4 different ways to be extroverted. It's not just one different way based on the cognitive functions that Jung brought to us. We know that it's basically being in rapport with something in the outside world. I can be rapport with a person. I can be extrovert with people. I can be extrovert with projects, with ideas, or with my environment or my experiences. So extrovert, even just, we're not even talking, just if you take it even off the developmental timeline, so let's get away from puberty for a second. Just the label itself doesn't tell me what kind of extroversion you're using. It just tells me that you have extroverted preferences.
Yeah.
But if we go to the cognitive map below the 4-letter code, which we use that car model, the 4-passenger car, to display the mind, now I can see qualitatively what kind of extroversion somebody uses.
Right.
So I can start to speak to that. So if we're talking to an ENTJ and they're like, I'm an introvert. You're like, no, you're not. You're an ENTJ. No, I'm an introvert. I don't like people. It's like, well, you have a fundamental misunderstanding of extroversion then.
Right.
Extroversion doesn't mean people. It means being in rapport with the extrovert environment on the channel that you like to do that on. And so I think that's where, the development then just adds another layer because now you got a timeline of those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're speaking to is that in order to really master an understanding of the system is the only way to make it so that you can understand something that is fluid. I mean, is it okay if I just lay the track that
Please,
it's fluid and in motion?
I think so.
I mean, is it okay if I just, can I have we established that beachhead?
I think so.
Because I was talking about how, to repeat what I said before, just to make sure that we've established that piece, is that since we are not a reflection of type is a reflection of us, and we're ever in motion. Mm-hmm. And so because we're constantly updating and constantly in motion, it means that anything that's associated with us is also going to be dynamic and in motion. And that's going to include our best fit type preferences. It's going to include our our preferred cognitive functions and the dichotomies, right? So the dichotomies being introversion, extroversion, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving, or judge or perceiver. Those are the dichotomy levels. And then underneath that would be the specific cognitive functions, the 8 Jungian functions that we have a preference for in a descending order. And so since these are parts of ourselves, they're going to be in motion just like we're in motion. Yeah. And so because of that, the only real way to master something that's in motion is to understand sort of the foundational principles of it. So you have to get to a nucleus level understanding of what all these things actually mean, because if it requires it to be pinned, right? If it requires it to be static, we're going to lose some of the accuracy since it's not a thing that is static in nature. Like type is not static in nature. So if we only understand it through a static lens, a snapshot of a profile, then we're by definition going to be losing some of its accuracy.
We can identify it, but we can't understand it.
Well, and even, right? I mean, I wouldn't even say that we can totally identify it.
Well,
actually.
Even that's hard too.
Yeah, because,
that's what we work on in profiler training.
Yeah, because if it's in flux and if it's in flow, then if you're looking for I think this is one of the reasons why I take some exception to sort of behaviorist ways of looking at type, even though we understand ourselves through our emergent behaviors, right? So obviously behaviors are going to come into it. But if there's overly narrowed ways that we've allowed certain types to show up.
Yeah.
If we say, extroverted sensing is always going to show up as somebody who's a good dancer or likes to dance. And then we run into somebody who has ESP preferences, but maybe just never got the opportunity to, or doesn't understand that part of themselves, or just has a life story where dancing is not a part of that. And maybe they've not understood that about themselves, or maybe they're just kind of, they apply their extroverted sensing to something else.
Maybe they don't have legs.
There you go.
I mean, that's a real easy one right there too.
Right. Although you can dance without legs, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they haven't accessed that part of themselves, or that's just not a piece of it, then we're going to miss them.
Yeah.
We're going to say, oh, that can't be somebody who has extroverted sensing as a dominant function, because if they were, they'd be a good dancer. And I know some ESP types that are awkward dancers.
Yeah.
Right? That's just not how they applied it. They put it into a bunch of other stuff. So, or maybe they're older, or maybe they're young and they're still figuring things out. So when we go to an overly behaviorist model, then unfortunately we're not allowing for the amount of variety that gets shown up in type.
Well, what you're saying then is, I mean, and I agree with you, and this is again what we teach in our personality profiling, is that there's the behavior, and if you try to map that one-to-one with a personality type or cognitive function, you are going to get it wrong a lot, because that's like pinning that butterfly. Yeah. It's not going to be accurate because people are too complex and too dynamically in motion for that.
Yep.
And so what's a better metric, and this is what we teach our students, is you go one layer behind that, look at the decision point or the focused attunement. Decision point if we're on a judging function, or a focused attunement on a perceiving function. That is the level we look at, because the decision that was made for the behavior often comes from the cognition. Yeah, and that's what we're looking for.
It's the why behind it.
Exactly. And but you can't ask that directly because people don't know why they do things often.
People don't know why they do things.
So you kind of have to reverse engineer finding the reasons behind the behavior. Because all 16 types could report the same behavior. I just want to make sure it's clear that all types brush their teeth.
Yeah.
So
I mean, hopefully.
I mean, ostensibly. So like, oh, that means that you're this. No, I mean, like, there's a bunch of stuff that we do in life that we all have to do. It's the decisions we make to do those things that indicate type.
Right. And that's why we say that, like, our flow question, which is the first question we ask in every profiling session. Yeah. What do you love to do so much? The only reason you stop is because you're exhausted. Otherwise, you go on indefinitely. The top 5 answers are answers literally every type is going to give. It's like cooking, gardening, playing with my kids, reading or consuming content, and sex, right? And it's like, those are all just people things. All humans are doing those things. So, except for the anomaly. So it's not what people are doing behaviorally. It's like why they're doing what they're doing behind it. And the answer a person gives to that question is the starting point, not the end point. But in order to be able to understand type, then, is you can't understand it outside in. You kind of have to understand it inside out. Like, you have to start with the internal and then understand how the internal leads to some of those emergent behaviors. And so you have to understand what I would say, again, to go back to I think the point of origin of what I was saying is that you have to go to the nucleus. Yeah. So there's a nucleus level understanding of each of these aspects of type. And the nucleus is the center point. It's from which everything else sort of orbits, and everything else sort of emanates out of. Right, exactly. And the nucleus is not going to be behavioral. The nucleus is going to be basically, the way that I'm starting to see it now is the cognitive functions are basically a communication of slicing all of reality into 8 parts. Yeah. And the nucleus of each function is focused on that aspect of life. And it's basically us being pre-wired to not be able to resist it, right? It's like there's irresistibility to certain aspects of life. And depending upon our type preferences, we find those elements irresistible. We're pre-wired to be fascinated by them. We're pre-wired to be attuned to them. Mm-hmm. And so if you can get to the nucleus, what you're really talking about is what fundamentally can I not turn away from? What fundamentally am I massively fascinated by? Yeah. And by definition, because of the polarities, the functions don't just come in a single function, they come in sets of opposites. And so if you're looking at it in the terms of what am I pre-wired to be fascinated by, and then because of the cost of specialization, and I'm so focused on this, by definition, I'm pre-wired to kind of avoid this other thing. Right. Yeah. Like, that's the thing I don't want to be looking at. And so type it gives a little bit more flex and flow, because if you're talking about representing all of reality into 8 separate parts, then each category includes a phenomenal amount of things. Yeah. Right. So take, for example, extroverted thinking or effectiveness. If its nucleus is basically like an understanding of how to get something done, how to make an impact, how to make progress towards a goal, how to understand progress through metricizing, right? If like the nucleus of it is basically, I'm trying to make progress. I'm trying to make something happen in the outside world. How do I make something happen in the outside world? How do I lay a track? Well, I'm going to have to gather resources. Okay, so I have to gather resources. What else? I'm going to have to consider how much time it takes. I'm going to have to budget time to this project. Okay, how big is the scope of the project? Oh, it's pretty big. I'm probably going to have to bring other people in. So now we talk about extroverted thinking being about resource management, but what if the nucleus of it is just like, I'm trying to make progress towards an end game? That's what I want. I'm fascinated by end games. I'm fascinated by closing a loop. I'm fascinated by making an impact. I'm fascinated by making something happen and a goal and achieving. That's what I'm fascinated by. What are all the things that surround that? What are all the things that are part of that? Well, it could be somebody who gets really focused on money because money helps facilitate making things happen. Or it could be somebody who's really focused on craftsmanship because the end product is beautiful, right? And so I'm like really focused on trying to make this thing happen in the most beautiful way possible. Or it could be somebody who's just really focused on time because time is one of the most important metrics that go into making something happen. In order to make something happen, you're going to have to budget your time well. So a person with extroverted thinking can be, they're pre-wired to be fascinated and focused on that getting things done piece. But then there's all this variety of what aspect of that will particularly pull them. Yeah. And it's usually based on training. It's usually based on what were the things that they were encouraged when they were fascinated by this. How were they encouraged to be fascinated by it? Or alternatively, how were they discouraged? Right? Like I have a friend who has INTJ preferences who was raised by a TP father and an FJ mother. Every time he tried to get something to happen, every time he tried to make something happen, they basically frustrated his attempts. So his relationship to extroverted thinking or effectiveness is not well, for a long time, it wasn't a healthy one. He was always trying to just figure out how to make something happen at all. So what did that encourage him to do? It encouraged him to go massively inward and start conceptualizing end games. And so he turned into a far more conceptual person than he turned into a practical person. Yeah. Whereas I know INTJs who have been raised in households where practical considerations were like the absolutely imperative. So they became more practical thinkers and they were more about like actually doing the hands-on piece. So that communicates that once you know the nucleus, which is getting something done, and all the things that surround, right, and are orbiting, and a part of the, sort of a part of, or everything that kind of surrounds that nucleus, there are so many things in there. You can see why a TJ type would be fascinated by anything that falls in the range of that, right? And that's how it fluxes and flows, right? That's how it's living and dynamic. That's how it's not just one thing. It's not just like, oh, you're a TJ. Clearly you want to get to like the top of the food chain in a career. I know some TJs who are not interested in that at all, right? They couldn't be less interested in that because extroverted thinking doesn't dictate your career path or your life path. It dictates what you can't stop being fascinated by. Yeah. Through the lens of the other aspects of your personality, which include your upbringing. So I think that idea of it being like living, breathing, flexing, and then ultimately a map that tells you all the other things, like where am I leaving money on the table? What parts of my personality are left unexplored that would be very rewarding to go explore, but for some reason I didn't get that message through life. Yeah. And so now it gives us also not just a way to understand ourselves as living and breathing and flexing and flowing, but also a way to tune into and tap into other aspects of ourselves that might just be waiting for us to take advantage of them.
Quickly, if you're listening or watching right now, I'd love to hear in the comments, are you one of the personality types, you know your best fit personality type, but you do not show up like the stereotypes would say? Right, you don't show up the way that all the online, articles say you should show up. You have a very different expression of your personality type. I'd love to hear about it. We'd love to hear it in the comments. Tell us what your personality, what your best fit, personality is, and then how do you show up different than maybe what the stereotype is? Mm-hmm. I'd be really interested in that.
Yeah, so for sure.
Can I talk, or do you want to keep talking? You talked for like 5 minutes straight just now.
Didn't I?
I didn't interrupt you at all. So I've lost where we're heading because I'm not sure. I didn't want to interrupt you, but help me get back on track.
Well,
because I had some things to say, but I lost. Give me a couple key cues here, and we'll get right back into it.
Well, I mean, I was going to say another thing. I don't have to go on another run for 5 minutes, but I was going to say, based on what you just said, but inviting people to.
Oh yeah.
I suspect one of the reasons why I mean, as you were talking, like say if you're like a not stereotypical example of your type. I think one of the reasons why people are a little gun shy to talk about type in this way is it feels like it gives people permission to claim any type and then just use some sort of rationalization or story around it.
Well, it's certainly what we've had to train out of the profiler training systems, is because it's almost like if you have enough narrative, you can stretch and say, well, it's because of this thing. And like we tell don't use shadow functions to try to profile people, because it's going to mess you up, because then you can almost rationalize anything you're seeing, because we all have all of these energies running in us, right?
Yeah.
As you were talking, and you're kind of talking about the nucleus, I'll just add this idea, and we don't have to go down this road, but this is what I wanted to say, and I just remembered, so thank you for giving me a moment to remember it. I was talking to a new friend of mine who'd introduced me to this. Well, actually, he didn't introduce it to me. I already knew about this, but I just looked at it in more detail, and he gave me like a book recently. We were visiting him in Florida during a live event we just did. He's talking about gene keys. This idea of, I think it's like a popular thing that's been for 30 or 50 years.
It's adjacent to human design.
That's right. And it's almost like this idea that there's 64 frequencies in the world, and each of us, based on when we were born and what time we were born, a little astrology sounding, but it certainly was compelling to read some of the material he was showing me.
It's so weird. Human design almost weirds me out in the same way that I don't really understand how astrology works either. But like every time I read it, I'm like, am I just falling for a cognitive bias here? But like, it's like, it's weird how accurate it is, considering it's just when you were born and where.
Yeah. Well, I think what it's speaking to is something that I've been very sensitive to my whole life, which is these frequencies. Like there's 64 frequencies, like actual sonic like energy frequencies, right? Or whatever. And there's different qualities to them. And then people almost have a personality pattern of these frequencies in the system. And I think a lot about that, because 64 is, can divide that by eight and,
I always get really excited whenever anything is divisible by 2 or 4 in a system, because I'm like, oh.
And my friend is showing me this, and we're showing him the card deck from profiler training, like, because we just done profiler training. So we're like laying out his car model and his wife's car model, and we're out to dinner, and we're like showing that, and he's showing me the gene key stuff. And he's like, this cognitive function, you're talking about extrovert, he's an ENTJ, he's ENTJ preferences, and talking about his NI in particular. It was really interesting to him because he's mapped other things in this other system of gene keys. And he's like, this sounds so much like what I've tuned into here. He's like, and then we went through his entire car model, all 4 functions, and he's like finding corollaries to different energy frequencies in his gene key map. And I don't know if they're, obviously I'm not trying to do a crossover here 1-to-1. I don't think there ever would be one, but it made me think. It's a really
interesting idea.
It made me think, I think in terms of like the musical scales, it's an octave, 8, again, the number 8 yet again in frequency. And it makes me wonder, did Carl Jung somehow through his intuition, and I wonder if we're going to get instruments to measure this soon, and I know Dario's working on it with the EEGs, are we going to be able to measure, did Carl Jung just tap into the base of 8 frequencies that are in reality, that also are within us in a personality pattern? The that extroverted thinking you were just talking about, what if that's a frequency of energy that it's almost attractive to people that have TJ preferences, like that same frequency is humming inside of them.
Yes.
And so all the things that are resource management, hierarchy, project, not topically, but energetically, they're attracted to those.
Yes.
Topics are, it's like topics are more the expression of something, but not the energy of something. So I almost wonder, and I think we're probably going to get very close to this. I think we're about to enter, and we've talked about this just in the past few episodes. We talked about the money system and the energy systems energy is probably going to be a measurement of the future. And then after we recorded those podcasts, here comes along Elon Musk last week talking about the same thing. And I think a couple other smart people are talking about how we might have just like an energy dollar, not just an actual like fiat, but it'll be like energy, like a Bitcoin type thing. We'll measure things in energy. Yeah. And I wonder if we're almost close to being able to measure things. I think this is I can almost feel it on the bubble. Like it's on the edge of human consciousness. We're about to tune into energies directly.
Yeah, frequencies.
Frequencies and energies directly, which is really interesting. And I think the EEGs, when, Dr. Dario Nardi's been working on these for a while. He's been doing them at our live events. And we're starting to get some patterns from our students and our profilers at the live events doing the EEG readouts. And I just wonder if there'll be some instruments to measure this soon. And with the internet and AI, maybe these core 8 nucleuses or energy frequencies that Jung did, we could find more expressions of them. But I still think what's nice about them is you don't have to have all the technology. Like it's an internal almost self reference. Like it's embodied. It's like you just kind of know it by your experience. Like it's experiential.
Yes.
And that's what I love about it is you don't have to make it be like non-technical, and you can still have a sense of these things working. And the more we've worked with them in a very human to human way, you kind of start getting this pattern of these frequencies that show up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and actually what I was thinking about as you were talking is it goes back to like all the self-regulation stuff we've been discussing.
Yes.
Because I think there are frequencies that go through our bodies as well. And there's an energetic state we're in when we're regulated. Like that's a state, right? And there's like an energy we feel. Like is the energy of our body settled?
Yeah.
Right? Do we feel ourselves calm? Is our nervous system calm? And when it's not, when it's spiked up, like that's a high energy, we call it a high energy state. And it's and not that there's ever, I mean, we just in our last we just did a workshop, a self-regulation workshop this last Saturday. And one of the things I made sure to say multiple times is like, listen, dysregulation is a feature, not a bug. We have to be dysregulated. Dysregulation, like it helps us flee from predators. It tells us when something's off, right? Like it gives us a capacity to figure stuff out. It helps us learn. So dysregulation is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
The goal is not to never be dysregulated. It's to get back into a regulated space or state as fast as possible, because then we get our choice back, right?
Yeah.
We're not just reacting to things, we can now respond to them. But what's interesting is with my coaching clients, and I've been saying this for a really long time, and it just kind of struck me what I had been saying, is when we're in a space where we're talking about something that allows them to get closer to what I would call sort of like that, like the most version of themselves, like that inner alignment, that feeling like I'm rested into who I really am. The analogy or the being like Michelangelo's David, where Michelangelo said he wasn't carving David, he was just removing all of the pieces of marble that weren't David. And so in coaching, I like to one of my goals is like to help strip away all the pieces of marble that aren't us. And one of the ways we know that a piece of marble has been stripped away, a heavy thing we were carrying that wasn't ours and was never going to be us. I'll ask people once we do a piece of work that gets them the other side, how's your body feel now? And it's almost always like the answer is almost always, I feel calmer, right? And so I think when we get closer and closer to our most self, like the realist version of ourselves internally, and I hate to say like the best version because
that's subjective.
It's subjective. It's more like just the getting closer and closer and closer to the quote unquote the David that is within, and getting rid of all of the marble chunks that that weren't us. I think our body is the ultimate communicator or instrument that tells us we're doing that, because it gets more and more relaxed.
Yeah.
It gets more and more centered. And I think we're more and more on whatever our frequency is, like our vibe. And you can tell that we respond to frequencies all the time. I mean, I have like singing bowls, that like put us in different frequencies. People do, audio therapy that
binaural beats.
Yeah, binaural beats. We seek certain frequencies to get ourselves into different states. Music does it. Exactly.
I love music. Yeah, music does this.
So energies and frequencies, these are all the technologies that we're using all the time.
Yeah.
And I think less and less we're just relegating them to woo. Right. It's like, well, that's just woo-woo stuff. That's just BS. You can't measure that. And I think we're getting further and further away from the modernist last century that required everything to be, everybody had to have a lab coat and a clipboard in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of getting away from that thinking, thank goodness, because even though there was a lot of benefit that comes from that, that's also not a complete picture of reality.
Yeah.
And so I think we're getting more into that space. And like you said, I think we're going to start developing instruments to be able to read those frequencies and maybe even understand, like you mentioned, like sort of the frequency of a function or the frequency of the thing that we can't stop ourselves from being attracted to.
Yeah. You mentioned the self-regulation workshop. If you've missed that, we have the recordings available on our website, personality.com. And it's really great because we teach a little bit of each of the 4 channels of your body, your heart, your mind, and your imagination or intuition. And we do some journal prompts, which help you reflect. Then we did some breakout room conversation. You won't be able to do that on the recording because that was done live with people that were live on the workshop. on Zoom. But we then do some workshopping with people that come back from those conversations, and we do some live coaching with people and hear some reflection. And we go through all 4 of those. You might want to go and check that out, because if that resonates with you, you'd love to learn more of the building blocks. And we'll continue to create, by the time you go to our website, we might have more content too that we've developed for self-regulation. But it's really important that we find tools, I think, for this, because that's, again, we think it's one of the killer applications of personality type, is being able to get into those frequencies and regulate ourselves on those channels.
Yeah. So I think to kind of tie some of this stuff back in and go, like, is type static or is it fluid? Is it something that can be captured and studied, or is it something that has to be understood at a nucleus level and then observed in motion? And to me, the clear answer is that it has to be understood at a foundational nucleus level and then observed in motion. Like, it's a system running. And so because of that, when we're trying to find our own best fit type, a piece of it is not just going, well, I can do that. But I hear that so often. People are like, well, I do that. I can do that. Type is not what we can do. Type is what we can't stop ourselves from doing. It's the part of realities that we cannot stop ourselves from being fascinated by. And so because of that, because we're fascinated by certain aspects, other things force our attention and we have to pay attention to them. And they're in a variety of, I like that a little better than I like that, or I really dislike that. But if those 8 functions are a representation of 8 different elements of life, it means that we have to visit them at least at some point, right? At some point, because they're reality. They're the reality that we move through. If the sensing functions are experience, extroverted sensing being the experience I'm having right now, and introverted sensing being the experience I had, unless I have, some sort of condition that keeps me from being able to collect my experiences, I'm both going to be having an experience now, and I'm going to be able to remember experiences I had before, right? And all of that's going to give me a lot of information. Do I have sensing preferences if I can be present with a moment and if I can remember my past experiences and learn from them or figure out what that means to me? No, of course not. Right? Like, just because I'm able to do those or I can do them or have a relationship to those things doesn't mean that I am compelled to focus on them and that I'm pre-wired to be obsessed with those elements. I have thoughts. I have the ability to use brain. I think thinking is basically problem solving. And so I have the ability to solve problems in the outside world using resources and getting things done and making things happen. And I have the ability to conceptualize problems inside of my mind and understand them at a more theoretical level with like introverted thinking or accuracy, or the extroverted thinking, which is the out here. Just because I can solve problems, just because I can get things done, just because I can do resource management, just because I can theorize a concept and solve problems in my head, does this mean I automatically have thinking preferences? No, of course not, right? And on down, right? Feeling is humanizing. Humanizing others, humanizing myself. Intuition is a fascination with the directly unknowable, right? And all of us are going to have to engage with all of those things. So type. If we get too static around it, we think if I can do something else that is outside of this type's wheelhouse, therefore I must not be this type. I have to be one of the other types because I can do those things. And I think seeing type as fluid and flexing, not just within the type itself, but also to meet the challenges that reality throws at us, allows us to flex and flow through all of those other functions that aren't our preference as well. And so being able to do them or having a relationship to them is not going to distract us and go, oh, that must be the type I am now. It's going to be like, okay, I can do all of those things. What can't I stop being fascinated by? What just pulls me no matter what? Where do my eyes lock? Where am I always sort of obsessively returning to time and time again? And obsessively returning to is a much bigger indicator of type than the ability to do something. Or
the other way of saying that too is what channel or what frequency am I trying to pull things onto? Right? Every time I have a challenge in my life, I'm always trying to apply my emotions and my intuition to it because I have ENFP preferences.
Every time we have a problem, we're like, let's just come up with 10 more ideas and that'll solve it.
It's like I just assume that ideas are going to solve every problem I have.
No, the problem is that you have to fill out this paperwork and do your taxes. It's like, no, I can come up with 10 ways, 10 creative solutions.
The problem is you have too many ideas. Fix it. Let's make more ideas. That'll fix it.
That's right. I guess we're going to have to brainstorm our way out of this one.
And we all do this. Every personality type does this. And so I think that's too, it's what you can't stop being focused or fascinated by, but also what you tend to think is the right, like you're going to pull it into that sandbox to try to solve it or try to attune to it.
That's right.
I think that's the other piece of this too. So I do think that, so the original question you started at the very beginning of this podcast is type static or is it in motion? I mean, I'm oversimplifying the question, but basically I think we see it as this ever moving in fluid dynamic map. Now, I think if you told me that 15 to 20 years ago, especially when I was starting out with this, I would be angry about that.
Really? Angry?
Well, I'm not angry, but when I look at something like gene keys, I'm like, okay, 64 frequency. This sounds so complex. This is BS. Just so much stuff. Like I don't want to have to learn all and it's always in motion, and it feels just like, what it makes me feel is like there's these experts of a system. Yeah. And they all know it. And I'm going to always feel like humiliated that I'm never going to really know it as well as the people that created it or attuned to it.
Or beholden to other people's patterns or something.
Yeah. And so then I've always just got to be a follower. I'm not actually like a leader in the space. But if I've got a simple system like DISC or Big Five. Yeah. And it's just like the Big Five are like stats on a board, right? And it's like, oh, that feels really... I feel like I'm empowered by it. I feel like I can control. I can be an expert about it. And I could almost see myself, like if I was just starting out, rejecting this notion of a very dynamic, always fluid map, almost like that's too subjective. How could you ever pin anything down? I want things that are really objective or really almost like a butterfly on a pinboard. I feel secure that way. I feel like I don't feel humiliated that I don't know enough. I feel like I can be an expert very quickly. I feel like I can tell other people how it works and then teach type to my family and friends, So I could almost see somebody rejecting this idea of a very subjective fluid map because it's harder. Yeah. And it's not always the same answer. And it's like, well, it depends. You have to be in the context. So it makes it so that I couldn't just watch a video of somebody like a celebrity. Right. Basically, if I do that, I'm just putting them on a pinboard with a pin because I can't see them in their real life. I only see a slice of them in an interview. Yeah. But I could see somebody wanting to just have that at that level because then you go to the other, I'm so insecure. I don't feel empowered or, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I think you can observe somebody from a distance like a celebrity and take a stab. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that, Well,
we do it sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Not here on the show.
Yeah, not on the show, but we'll be watching something, we'll pause and we'll be like, what do you think that person's type is? So, I think everybody who's into type does that to some extent.
And that's appropriate.
Yeah, you just can't believe your conclusions. You can't be like, and I know for sure. I never feel like I can speak with authority on a celebrity's type unless I've met them. And so, and even then it's like, how much did I really get to know that person? But I think there's something to be said for not starting where I'm talking about,
of course.
Learning how to create a Monet, right? Or the quality of painting that is that complex and nuanced takes a lot of practice. And it takes a lot of time and effort and skill building, and learning how to draw, basically coloring book level characters is almost always where every artist starts. So there's nothing wrong with doing that, and we have to master it at every level. So when I say, do I think that it's static or do I think it's fluid? I'm not saying, and so therefore reject all static interpretations. Right. Yeah. It's like the static interpretations are how we start. That's where we begin. And it's okay to do that. I think what I noticed, though, is if a person gets to, you can get to there are coloring books that feature mandalas of great complexity. Yeah. But they're still bold lines, right? They're still two-dimensional. I'm heading to a point here, by the way. I know you're about to say something. I heard the intake of breath.
I have a better metaphor than a Monet, but I can add that afterward.
Can you let me complete the thought first?
I think it's a better analogy, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, you can give your... Hopefully it doesn't have to do with puberty. But
it's actually better than that, too.
Okay. But what I've noticed is that if a person never makes this conceptual leap, if it's always two-dimensional, if it's always something that's static, what ends up happening is that the coloring book does get more complex. It gets more, like there's more things that end up getting added to it because the two-dimensional static frame just will never encapsulate a person. And so because it can't encapsulate a person, the instinct is to continue adding more and more features to try to really nail an individual in all of these different slices and dices and all these different ways of looking at them. But if a person just goes, well, maybe it was never two-dimensional static to begin with. Maybe it's in flux and flow.
Yeah.
Now you can strip away the complexity and go back to the roots. But now it's more reflecting the reality of the person. So it doesn't have to have a lot of added features.
Yeah.
It goes back to the main source, but now the main source is in motion. It's three-dimensional. It's moving. And so that now doesn't feel like it's, you don't have to add a lot of color commentary to it. You don't have to add a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Because that's sufficient as long as you're seeing it in motion. It's like not seeing it in motion was the problem to begin with, not that it didn't have enough complexity to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I'll stay with the analogy we've been using, the butterfly one with the pin board. What I hear you saying is we have one monarch butterfly pinned, and that's appropriate to look at the monarch butterfly to go, oh, that's sort of what a monarch butterfly will look like.
Like that's its coloring, and that's sort of like the markings
size
and the size and shape.
But I won't. It's not in motion.
Correct.
So I have to go out in my yard and try to see it as it's flying and how it moves its wings, and now I see it in motion. Now
and what it's eating and what it's what it's doing naturally.
But what you're saying is people, and I agree with you. Instead of going out and trying to identify in the wild, they go, oh, well, I'll get another one and I'll kill it. I'll flip it back on its back and I'll pin it. Now it looks now I can see it from the other side. Now I'll put it on its side. Now I've got two sides, the back and the front. I can see all four sides, but they're all dead monarch butterflies.
Right.
And then I take one and I pull the wing off and I put, I just slice and dice it. I dissect it. I have all different poses for this monarch butterfly. I got 16 different poses of this monarch butterfly or whatever.
Yeah.
And now I know what a monarch butterfly is like, right? But do I really, or do I just know all like the definitions of it, all the ways it could look, but I don't know what it looks like. I still haven't identified how fast the wings flap.
Right.
Or how far it can fly, or how high it can fly, or how it lands.
Or
what it's eating, or any of the mechanisms of it in motion, because I'm just looking at all the static like slices of it, the static shots of it.
Yeah, I think an example of this is subtypes.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we did a whole series on subtypes, and we've included it in our owner's manuals, and I've used it in different programs. I like the idea of the subtypes, and the subtypes being dominant, creative, normalizing, and harmonizing. But the importance about, subtypes is like an attempt to make it so that there's something more fleshed out in the official system itself, right? Something that gives a little bit more texture.
Yeah.
But what's really important to remember about these subtypes is that they change throughout our life. That's the important thing to remember. Not that we just are a specific subtype, but that our subtype changes and alters as we grow and with our environment. Like if we end up in, it doesn't matter what type you are, you can be an ENFP that is in the accounting department for the last 20 years. Well, why would an ENFP ever be in accounting? I don't know, but I know ENFPs that have been in accounting for 20 years, so I don't know why. I'd have to know their story.
Well, and somebody that just looks at the corkboard may disagree with you right now. Mm-hmm. Because that's not what I've seen. That's not what I know to see an ENFP.
Right. An ENFP would
the
never
one I'm
be
looking at on the board doesn't look like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But because I know that's the case, then and almost always those ENFPs are normalizing. Almost always, because the context that they're in encourages normalizing behavior. So it goes, oh, I guess a normalizing ENFP could be in accounting for the last 20 years. Is it because they're a normalizing ENFP? Or is it because their context and circumstances have encouraged them to become more normalizing? Yeah. And it's the latter, not the former. And so again, we're looking at elements of type that flex and flow depending upon our choices and our behaviors and the environments we find ourselves in. There's a lot of texture here. And so, again, you don't have to this is not like the starting point. This is not the first domino you kick over. It's really appropriate to start with like the real big overviews. It's just if you're a person who's been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you have to let go of the idea that it can all be two-dimensionalized.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you have to go, oh, there's like a jump here I have to make. There's like, I have to go from this idea of 2-dimension into 3-dimension because that's actually where type lives, is in the 3-dimensional space.
Okay, now I want to give my analogy.
Okay.
Okay, because I think this is going to help exactly what you're talking about. We were trying to introduce a game the other night. We never got to it with friends of ours, Emily and Shinkai. We didn't get to teach this to them, but we're going to play Cosmic Encounter with them the other night.
Which, by the way, if you've never heard of Cosmic Encounter, it's a fabulous game.
It's a really fun game.
One of my favorite games of all time.
But to learn the game,
it's super nerdy.
You kind of like, I mean, anytime you learn a game, it's a little complex and there's a lot of dynamic moving parts.
It's a little complex.
Because you can be playing the game, but basically you have these alien powers that create like alternative, modifications.
Basically, it's a game that is played very simply, but everybody gets 2 alien powers that allow them to break a rule of the game.
Correct.
So you have to remember what rules you individually can break, and you have to kind of be watching for what rules your opponent can break. And so it throws this normally organized game into a little bit of chaos.
Yeah. So to learn any game, but particularly a game like this, you actually static it. Everybody lays their cards up, face up, so we can see everybody's cards. Mm-hmm. Everybody sees all the resource everyone has, and then you learn the rules and you kind of practice moving your pieces, and you learn it like in an unreal environment. You have to like static
like synthetic.
A synthetic, you have to like,
because you never play a game with that level of transparency.
You have to make it static.
Yeah.
Then you learn all the mechanisms. Oh, okay, so I would throw this card down if you played that. Oh, I understand how that works. Right. And you kind of practice a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you go, you ready to play? And everybody picks their cards up, you reshuffle, and then you get to playing for real.
Right.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. There's this moment where we do need to like pause and we learn something. We learn the Myers-Briggs system, or we learn personality profiling, like what we teach in our PT classes. And we learn, the embodiment exercise days are perfectly examples of this, where we spend 2 days at our live events for profiler training, where we go through the 4 perceiving functions and we embody them experientially, and then the judging functions, same thing.
Yeah.
And the idea is that we tune into the frequencies of what they feel like. And we're also
the
looking...
fundamental nucleus of it.
And we're looking at the people to the left and right of us too. Like students are saying, oh, this person, my same type is experiencing it this way. A different type's experiencing it this way. So we start to getting a control of the self, of the instrument that we are, but also say other people are experiencing the same exact experience of that function.
Yep.
So this just opens up so much learning. But to do that, we have to almost pretend like that function isn't connected to polarity for a moment.
Right.
We have to pretend like that function just isolates in, like not with a human's desires and all their weird stuff going on, right? It's just at its own baseline.
Yeah, it's siloed.
Just like learning a game.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, you ready to, and then at the end of the week, we always have them do a live profiling session. It's like, that's like us going, okay, grab your cards. Are ready to hit the game? We're going into motion. And now we have to watch a real human show up, and they're doing a profiling conversation with that person, actually tuning into them. But that person's a dynamic personality map moving. Like they're in motion, and they have to like, now in real time as a profiler training student, identify that personality type as it's in motion, not as it's like stuck on a board.
Yep.
We're not just reading like descriptions and trying to identify them. This is a person telling us stuff that sometimes it's hard or confusing to understand what they mean by the things they're saying. They don't even know their own cognition sometimes.
Yes.
Because you're asking questions they never thought about.
Yes.
So I think that gameplay is kind of what's happening a lot. But what you're saying is you have to graduate from the learning moment to go into gameplay then. Like the dynamic part. Yeah.
Well, and as mentioned, there's a moment when if we don't graduate, if we don't, like there's this moment of, I wouldn't even say it's like mastery over the system. Yeah. There's this even if you're not like totally accurate, it's still a mastery of like, if you, the listener, can do the math in your head, meaning that somebody said, I throw out a type, ISTJ. If you can relatively quickly figure out what that person's cognitive functions are, like, okay, SITE, FINE, right?
And or whatever. Maybe even explain it a little bit.
Right. And maybe even be able to explain it or whatever. If like you can do the math quickly in your head, you have like the basic premises of the functions down, you can kind of understand, you might even know what their shadow functions are or whatever. If you're at that level of mastery over the system, you're probably getting close to being ready for what I'm talking about. And my observation has been that if a person gets a mastery of the system at that level, but doesn't do this leap of taking it from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional, I find that it's almost like they get stuck in this hamster wheel. And they keep wanting to bring type back to that two-dimensional model. And so I think this is the culmination of what I want to say. So I'm going to say the thing that I think all of this is leading up to, and I didn't know it until just now when, like the lily pads go, okay, this was the final lily pad as I'm talking conceptually. If you're at that level of mastery, stop studying the system and start studying people. That's actually how we get good at type at a certain point. And that's how we make that shift. We go, I've got to stop trying to master all of the elements of type. And now I have to understand how people's stories impact and affect who they become. And if I can get good at hearing a story, if I can get good at hearing how somebody's circumstances, their upbringing, the influences in their life, where they grow up, the sort of the institutions that surrounded them. Yeah. If I can get good at understanding how that life experience can mold and shape a person, now I'm back into understanding the system of type in a totally different way. Yes. Right. Because now we're not talking about type, we're talking about development. Yeah. Right. We're talking about how it shifts over time, how it flexes and flows, how it's three-dimensional along the ride of us, because we're not serving the system. I'm under no obligation to look like an ENTP to anybody else. I mean, I've had some people say like, oh, obviously she's using extroverted thinking, which is like hilarious to me, but thank you for the...
I wish.
Thank you.
We'd get a lot more done if you were.
I really appreciate the flattery. And if only everything else in my life reflected that. But, I mean, people will be like, well, that person's not this type. And it's like that person, if those are their best fit type preferences, they're under no obligation to fit your template of what you think their type looks like. Yeah. Like I'm under no obligation to look like every other ENTP. But I've also not had the same experiences as other ENTPs. Yeah. Like how many ENTPs like reprogram themselves from a cult? Yeah. Right. So I'm going to look really different.
Say that statement again you said.
Yeah.
What did you say again? If you've gotten to that level of mastery.
Yeah.
Summarize this again.
If you've gotten to a level of mastery over the system, stop studying the system and start studying people.
And I think that's what we're trying to do in profiler training. Mm-hmm. That's what we're actually teaching.
Yeah.
Is and a lot of people come in knowing a lot about like the Myers-Briggs system or even cognitive functions.
Yep.
Some are very studied, and I think and I think people are blown away by how much they learn, because it's not just attuning to other people and being able to spot things in a dynamic map that's running, but then it also changes you as a person. Mm-hmm. Because you realize, wait, I'm just as dynamic. I have way more available to me than I thought. Maybe even sometimes we read about type and we static ourselves and we lock ourselves in. Well, I'm an ENFP. I can't be on time. Like what? I can't say that. Of course I should probably be on time. I should develop that and try to, like, if that's something I want to do, like there's things I can't just excuse myself. Like maybe there's growth I have. And I think what that really does in like the profiling piece is that you realize just how dynamic you are as well.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening right now and we're doing a new cohort run all the time, we're signing up new cohorts, go over to profilertraining.com and let's get you in this next cohort. Let's get you signed up for profiler training moving in this direction. I think you're going to love this program because it's going to do exactly what Antonia's talking about. Stop just learning we go deep in the system. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like shadow, access relating to self and others, descending order of certainty, shadow, like all this stuff.
All the good juicy stuff.
But it's really focused on the other human that we're trying to help profile and get a sense of their best fit type.
And that's why it's an interview. That's why it's not like
a conversation.
It has to be a conversation.
Dialectic.
That's right. I think one of my favorite questions now in a profiling session is, has it always been that way for you?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what the person answers. It's like, what do you prefer? Do you like this? What's going on with you around here? Tell me how you show up here. And the person will be a faithful narrator of their life. And then I'll go, has it always been that way for you? And oh my gosh, I get so much juicy information.
Yeah.
No, actually, it was totally the opposite. So if I just took them at face value and they told me how they show up, and I didn't know that this is like brand spanking new for them, and this is all brand new development over the last couple of years, and they've actually struggled with it their entire life, I might go, oh, you're this type because you just reported to me that you're good at this thing. But if I get the backstory...
That happens on paper tests or online tests all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, online tests, go take tests, go take our tests, or assessment, like go take all of them because... it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not an end point, right? Like, it's like, start your journey there. Don't end it there. But if you ask, has it always been this way for you? And now you get a story of frustration, struggle, confusion, uncertainty. And it's only been in the last couple of years that I've really started to make peace with this part of me. And they're like in their 40s.
Yeah.
But your original question asked what they thought about this thing, and they asserted that it's totally fine and they're great.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but that's only because, you worked hard to make peace with this part. This was not I can't stop doing this part.
It ties you to the timeline. It shows you the timeline of somebody.
Exactly.
And I think that what the last thing I'll say about that is, if we look at people as static, we don't expect anything of them. We don't expect them to grow or change or develop or be better.
Yeah.
Or be different. But we know humans aren't static. So it doesn't make any sense why anyone approaches personality type in a static way to me, like butterflies in a corkboard, when we know that butterflies actually fly. I mean, yes, you can get some information, and that technically is a butterfly, but it's dead.
Yeah.
A live butterfly is in motion, and it's so much better to observe that. I think you're going to get much more fidelity. You're
going to understand a butterfly much better if it's still alive.
Yeah.
And communicating its instincts.
While it's doing what it's doing. And
that's right.
how it shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the comments below this episode, love to hear what's coming up for you. Have you started to develop more of a fluid map of personality? Do you see it this way? What did we say in this episode that really struck you, that made maybe a reframe? I think really tuning into something that you have an aha or a reframe around, like, I thought this, but now I'm starting to think this. And it doesn't have to be from this episode. It could also be just in your type journey.
Yeah.
Like, I used to think it was more static and more label-based. And the longer I've been doing this, and we've been coaching with it and working with real clients in our PLP, personal life path mentorship, or in the profiler training classes, like, it is so dynamic. It's hard to see it static anymore, having been on this journey for so long.
I have a new one. I know you asked the listener, but I just, my brain went, you have a new one.
Leave a comment, Antonia.
Okay.
Let's go.
I'm going to leave a comment.
You'll read your own comment to fuel yourself.
I'm going to leave a comment or ask a question. That I think we're, even type professionals, even people who have done this for a long time and have a business around this, we're the worst at describing our dominant function. I am noticing that this is like a trend. Everybody's crap at describing their dominant function. And if I go back and look at their driver. Their driver.
Car model.
Yeah, in the car model. Yeah, their driver. And if I go back, I'm like, I'm really crappy at describing extroverted intuition. I'm like, am I just describing myself, or am I describing the function? So I end up leaning on theory for that function more so than any other function. And I'm really trying to go like, okay, what is it truly? And I recently ran into a really great video, actually, that a woman produced. I ran into it on X, where she said, like, what are you, she was talking to herself. So it was like, like half of it.
She's schizophrenic.
Yeah. No, but those like skits where people.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. It's
jump
like
cut.
They play the same. It was two different characters.
So she's jump cutting from this version of herself to this version of herself, and
people in the future are going to be like, "Are they nuts? Were these people crazy?
Happening?
What were they doing back then?"
Right. Well, we'll just be able to do it very quickly. Well, we'll have clones at that point, maybe. She was like, "What are you waiting for?" And it jump cut to her on the other side, and she said, "The perfect conditions." And then it jump cuts to the other person, and she just looks at her. And basically the entire time, this person who kicked over the conversation, every time it jump cuts, she's just looking at the other version of herself like, And so she doesn't hardly say anything. She's looking at her. And as she's looking at her, as a reflection back, like she's hearing herself say all these things. And she basically got to the conclusion of, I'll never have perfect conditions. I am wasting time by not just going ahead and doing the thing. I will be learning more by doing the thing, even if it means failure, than if I wait for perfect conditions, which don't exist anyway. And in fact, I can allow the experience of doing this thing guide me to the next moment and the next moment. And I don't have to have it all perfectly lined up. I can just allow the unfolding of the journey
Yeah.
to be something that gives me, even though it's unknown, gives me a sense of certainty as I'm traveling into the unknown, because I'm building awarenesses and insights and ahas as I'm going.
Profilertraining.com.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's exactly what I was trying to say earlier.
Yes. Go do that. Go to profilertraining.com and just see what happens.
No,
But
sign up for the next cohort.
I was like,
it's the next thing.
that's an unbelievably great description of extroverted intuition.
It is a good one.
Yeah, it's so good. And I'm like, oh, I wish I'd come up with that. But it's like, it basically, it's an unfolding. It's like an intuitive, instinctive unfolding of what the next right step is, and being okay that the conditions are not perfect. In fact, they just exist. Right. And so as long as the conditions exist, you're allowed to take a bold action and take a bold moment, not having to know how it all pans out, but just kind of like let yourself sort of stumble along and figure it out, and let your intuition take you to what I call the next lily pad and the next lily pad. And I was like, wow, that was a great explanation of it. And I'm like, but I'm terrible unless I have, assists there. I think I'm getting better, but I started noticing other type creators and other people, and it's almost always when they get to their dominant function that they kind of fall apart a little bit. And I'm like, okay, it's not just me. So anyway, that's my new one. I'll type it in, and then maybe I'll ask a question at the end of it. What do you think this is? ? And then I'll go answer.
That'll be really
It's
weird.
very meta.
Super meta.
So anyway,
All right, we better wrap this blessing up.
that's right.
My name is Joel Mark Witt,
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
and we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker Podcast.